Why do you think meme coins are getting so popular right now? If you have a bit of understanding of TA, then you can engage with the market, because a lot of the problems people were having with Dogecoin, they were making money by buying it, but then they didn't know when to sell it. Do you feel that people are still paying attention to what a coin actually does when they're considering trading it?
When you see a coin that's based off of a company, how often would you say it's actually owned by the company that it's named after?
Welcome to the Hola Prime Podcast, where markets meet mindset and we decode the chaos of crypto. Today, we are diving into one of the loudest corners of the space: meme coins and influencer hype cycles. Is it all smoke and mirrors, or is there something else going on beneath the surface? But before we get into all of that noise, we've got a quick announcement. I am hyped to introduce a new face to Hola Prime X, which is Grant. Grant, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Doing good. Good to be here.
I've heard that you're sharp, tactical, and bring some serious enthusiasm to our content creation team. So hopefully we'll be hearing a lot more from you over the next few days and weeks. Is that right?
For sure.
Okay, so let's unpack some of this madness. Right. So, Grant, for you, why do you think meme coins are getting so popular right now?
I think there's a lot of benefit to popularizing them for the people behind them, obviously. You know, there's always the issue of the riskiness of rug pulling the meme coin, or really just blowing up the meme coin in general to make the developers of it very wealthy. So I feel like the best way to do that is through influencers, social media, Twitter, regardless of whatever it is. However they can get people to hear about it, kind of the marketing is the hardest part. We've really reached a point in meme coins where I feel like it's actually like a product now, where it's being marketed, it's being advertised to the public. Maybe not paid marketing. I don't know if anybody has tried that yet, but I feel like the benefit is because the bigger they get the meme coin, the more profitable they can, the more of a profit they'll be able to turn in whatever way they end up doing it.
Yeah, I mean, have you traded meme coins before? Do you focus on them? What's your kind of bag you look for?
I try to stay away from meme coins mainly because of this, because there's a lot of concerns with, like, the developers are the only winners. But I mean, I'm sure there's been plenty of get rich opportunities with meme coins. It's just there's also so much, as you say, hype culture, to where you have to be very careful that you're not just falling into a trap where the developers are marketing to you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think there's also, I mean, things have moved on significantly over the last few years. But for me, the biggest problem I've always observed when people are, Dogecoin has obviously been the headlining thing for the last few years. If you have a bit of understanding of TA, then you can engage with the market, because a lot of the problems people were having with Dogecoin, they were making money by buying it, but then they didn't know when to sell it. And then if they had done that, they could have benefited from that volatility, even if it's a little bit nefarious under the curtain. But I mean, can a coin without real tech behind it be a good investment? I mean, in your mind, I mean, are trading meme coins more about just short-term stuff, or would you hold it for the long term?
I mean, there are some meme coins, like if we're talking about like pump.fun meme coins, where the life cycle is like 30 minutes, I don't think those could ever be a good investment. Maybe 0.5% of them could possibly turn into something. If we're talking about meme coins that are, for example, Dogecoin, or, it's just a meme coin that doesn't necessarily have tech behind it, but it's also not like a mainstream, it's considered meme. Those actually, I would say, can be a good investment because they're going to follow the cycles, especially if they've already been around for one. Chances are they're going to follow the cycles again. So they can be somewhat predicted as far as a more of a long-term play. When it comes to like the pump fund meme coins, those, I mean, I really don't think they could be an investment. And also, even with TA, a lot of the volume is so low that they're not really going to be, it's really impossible to predict what's going to happen with those, because it's all just based on hype. Like, it's more based on if the developers have another tweet go viral rather than anything to do with the actual TA.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, my perception of the space is, especially considering all the pressures which in the world economy and the previous cycles in terms of altcoins following Bitcoin have kind of broken a little bit over the last few months. But we're still seeing meme coins, of course, as the de facto top in terms of trading volume. Now, my perception of that is simply that it's always been retail sandbox, and retail doesn't tend to know any better. And therefore, that's why meme coins are the only things kind of getting a lot of volume at the moment. And potentially, maybe when the market shifts to, I don't know, it actually starts moving up properly, then we might see some of the more use case tokens. I'm not saying DeFi because that might be a bit old hand, but these use case tokens then taking back the top position once the market takes off. I mean, is that your perception too, or do you feel that something else is brewing under the surface?
I mean, I feel like right now the hype is at a medium level, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I feel like a medium level of hype is usually where the meme coins get the most volume, because at a high level of hype, a lot of it's going to Bitcoin, because high level of hype usually comes from Bitcoin pumping. But when it's a medium level of hype, the retail traders, I feel like they get bored and they need something with more action. And that kind of moves a lot of them over to the meme coins, especially when it feels like Bitcoin, especially right now, is, it's kind of ranging a lot. There really is not anything out of the ordinary happening with Bitcoin. So I feel like maybe to almost entertain themselves, a lot of the retail traders are moving to meme coins where there's a little bit more action and things are a little bit, um, I don't want to say more unpredictable, because I mean, a ranging market is probably one of the most predictable markets, but maybe that's not even what they want.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this a lot over the last few weeks. So imagine this: in 5 years' time, we've got Pizza Hut token, Chipotle token, Melania token, Musk token, right? All of these, everyone, Taylor Swift token, right? Green Day token, right? Now, and is crypto going to the point where it's going to be a populist kind of arena in the future? I mean, do you see that happening?
First of all, I'm very bullish on Chipotle token. Second of all, I feel like a lot of this is already happening. I mean, there's already being tokens launched, not necessarily like, ones that are going to end up listed on exchanges, but like if we're talking like companies launching tokens, I mean, there's been Claude, Anthropic tokens. A lot of these companies are really just not necessarily using this to gain some kind of crazy power or do something deep. I feel like it could just be because, especially with a lot of these newer like AI companies that have these younger developers and they're already kind of viral, maybe they see it as kind of an opportunity to get a little bit of entertainment and possibly quick money by launching a meme coin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's certainly where we are in the space at the moment. But I'm like, all these problems in the stock market at the moment, in the Nasdaq and all of that. What if crypto ends up being the next stock market, where essentially these these hype coins, these meme coins, these populist coins, which represent everything, become the barometer for the success, excuse me, of a company. So Apple token. I mean, I'm I'm trying to figure out. We're all trying to figure out. All of us are trying to figure out what is the market going to look like in 5, 10 years. So, I mean, do you think that's a possibility?
I feel like it, I mean, I feel like it's a possibility that we may have some tokens like that actually listed on exchanges,
Mm,
but you have to think, comparing the meme coin version of Apple token versus the stock version of Apple with years and years of history, it makes you wonder which one is going to be more influential on determining the success of the company. It probably would not be the meme coin, but I think it's a possibility that we could end up seeing stuff like that, especially as, you know, the hype is definitely not dying down. Every cycle it seems to kind of return to the same amount as last cycle at a certain point in the cycle. And it's just kind of developing over time. And now as we develop, we're getting closer and closer to kind of meme coin revolution. So it may be possible to see something like that where companies are actually listed.
yeah, and I just my concern is like, if you're looking at Apple stock, which is obviously gives good returns because they're a growing company and that's fantastic. But if you're seeing, I don't know, 10, 15, 20% gains on a good year for Apple, right? But you're seeing that Apple token is giving you 120, 200%, where's the attention going to go, right? Even if it doesn't benefit the company.
Right.
So
Yeah, you're right.
I think that brings us on to the next area, which is utility. So we've been talking about this, but are people paying attention actually? Because when I plan investments, I'm paying it. I do a lot of research into, the groups behind it, if there's a company behind it. Do you feel that people are still paying attention to what a coin actually does when they're considering trading it or investing in it?
Well, let me ask you, Paul, when you see a coin that's based off of a company, how often would you say it's actually owned by the company that it's named after?
Well, I think I don't have a big enough shovel to dig deep enough to find the answer to that. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think any of us do. So that kind of makes me wonder, as far as that question goes, like if it's almost impossible to know that, I feel like by the time they get listed on exchanges, it becomes possible to know. But it's almost so you're so right with where's the attention gonna go. It reminds me of what, like when we had Trump token and everybody thought he got hacked. All the attention was there. And there was even more attention wondering, oh, did he get hacked? Is this really even him? And it kind of makes you wonder, these things are like magnets for attention. So yeah, I do feel like maybe they won't be considered safe long-term investments. But which one is going to get more attention? I do believe it'll be the meme coin versions.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause I hear the same sort of thing, the same sort of tokens I hear people wanting to trade. So a new student will come to me and I'll say, "Oh, you've done some investing, right? So what have you invested in?" And I hear the same things: dog with hat, Doge, Pepe, Solana, right? And if all of that's what's Trump coin, Melania coin, Chipotle coin, all of those things are in the media and are the front face of crypto, then I mean, isn't that what people are chasing? And then how do people like me and you corral these people and say, hang on, hang on. This is a proper use case. This is a proper price history, right? This is what we should be looking at. How do we get these people to come on side, or are we the ones which are late to the party?
Well, it is important to remember that most people who are getting overwhelmed by the hype culture and they're more concerned about which one is in, Twitter more, the news more, are usually the ones on the more unprofitable side, or at least the newer side, right? The less experienced side. So I do feel like not necessarily that it's our responsibility to help them realize that, but I feel like the market may do that on its own.
Yeah, it does tend to do that. Can you think of any? I mean, can you think of any coins? You've just obviously got to scan through tens of thousands quickly in your mind. But is there any coins you think are quite underrated because they're actually useful? Which people, I have a few. Have you got any which you've been looking at, which you feel have a great use case, but just aren't getting the attention in Google and in the advertisements?
Honestly, I feel like there's so much potential with AI coins, because AI is it's a big interest of mine because it's so incredible. Like I can use it in my business, I can use it outside of trading. It's so useful. But I mean, would you say there's any good AI tokens that are actually representing some kind of real utility?
We don't provide this on Hola Prime X, but Victoria VR is an example of an established AI company which then launched a token, right? And they've been around for a while, and they have a use case. They have affiliations with Apple, potentially with stuff to do with the Apple Vision Pro. You also then have got Render, RNDR, which is arguably the cure to a lot of Hollywood visual effects ills. Because part of the issue, of course, is always the cost of rendering. And if you're into the space and you understand, if you see a Hollywood movie or even a Marvel movie, and you look at like movies like The Flash or even parts of Black Panther, and you think, how did this all look so good, but then this part of it looks so bad? And the reason is, of course, because visual effects people are overworked, and the solution, and it costs money. Computer power costs money. But when you've got RNDR, which is essentially a blockchain which will render things for you on the Octane network, right? That is real utility, which can have real serious growth. And I know creators at top of their game, YouTubers with 10 million plus subscribers, which use this for their projects. However, of course, Render does move. It is usually a first mover along with memes because of people are trying to front run lower prices. But I never see it advertised. I never see a lot of YouTubers talking about it. Right? I mean,
There's so much incredible stuff, like, for example, the new Google VO3, the talking AI video generator. It's incredible. But all of these really fast moving, really insanely developmental AI companies, don't seem to have any connection with meme coins yet. And I feel like once they do, then it actually is going to start to become kind of like news trading, where when these companies are actually being driven by the development of the company rather than just the way that the rest of the market moves, they're not fully dependent on the crypto market because they kind of um, actually have so much else going for them. It's going to be really interesting because they're not going to be traded the same way. It's going to be even more hype culture. It's going to be even. It's also probably going to follow the rest of the market, but there's going to be like whole extra layers of unpredictability because now it's going to be based on the developments of that company, the things that they release, how they're doing financially, and that's where it starts to become like, all of these listed companies like a stock market, but in crypto.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the overarching question of this last 10 minutes of this conversation is, does utility matter, right? Does it matter? And when you ask a traditional trader, you ask someone on Wall Street, does utility matter? Then they'll say yes, because we make decisions based on what we invest in, what we short, based on the health of the company, or any merger activity or any of that kind of stuff, right? But in crypto, and certainly, we don't need to get obviously political, but with populism, trending a little bit around the world, is this going to change, the way the crypto market, and make it kind of that entity for the future? And we all imagine it like, oh, I'm going to pay for this subway with Bitcoin, right? Okay, that's coming for sure, right? That exists today, right? We can do that in some places, or with USDT, but is it going to be a world where you can only pay, right, for Subway with Subway token, right? And then what kind of chaos is that going to lead? Like, oh, I don't shop at Asda because I don't have the app to convert it, or I can't do this at Walmart because I've only got a Target coin. I mean,
Yeah,
can you imagine?
that makes me think. That reminds me of something that kind of exists. At Walmart, you can only use like tap to pay with the Walmart app. You can't use Apple Pay at Walmart. So a part of this is already happening, and it does discourage me from going to Walmart. It did until I finally got the app, and I still haven't connected a card. So a lot of times I still don't want to go to Walmart. I go to Publix instead because I don't want to have to use their app. So I mean, obviously, though, it has been a profitable decision for Walmart because they've stuck it through for a long time. So having that extra, I don't know, 3% payment processing fees apparently is better than losing 50% of their customers because none of us want the app. I don't know. But maybe this is the direction that the companies want to go where they have more control. For example, Shopify now, they own Shop as well. So they kind of, I would assume that gets them an extra payment processing fee compared to somebody who checks out with Apple Pay instead. A little bit more of that money is going to go to Shopify. So you could imagine that it would have some kind of a benefit for the company. And maybe not in the next 2 years, but maybe in the next 4 years, especially for some of these trendier places, I could imagine that something like this could start to happen.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, as someone who's lived in South America and seen, real difficult with international payments, Venezuela being one example, with crazy inflation, and there is a rollout at the moment of Tether being, a good asset which people can use in South America, not in Venezuela specifically at the moment, but in Argentina it's launched, I think, and Colombia as well, where they've got specific debit cards just for Tether. But it highlights that there's a battle seemingly going on for what is going to be the de facto currency to use, and I don't think we're going to have an answer to that in the next 10 or so years. But talking about like these psychological kind of triggers which drive kind of this meme hype culture, what psychological tactics do you kind of witness that are commonly used to attract traders, so we can tell people what to look out for, perhaps? I mean, you're pretty
Oh, yeah.
down with all the hype filled YouTube content, all that kind of stuff. So what are the tactics people use, and how do we avoid them?
Well, first of all, the price action itself is the greatest example of that because, that's kind of the ultimate goal is to fake out as many people as possible, liquidate as many traders as possible. That is what moves the market. So aside from price action itself, I would say the biggest place where people are getting tricked by developers of coins, or they're getting, if you want to get really deep into it, the market makers are paying the influencers to make them push the message, whatever. It's, I would say, most prominent on Twitter. Would you agree?
Well, honestly, I don't venture into the social spaces, so I'll have to defer to you, but I can presume you're correct based on what I know,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Because I feel like the virality on Twitter is so different because, it's all text based. And a lot of these markets, especially with the meme coins, with the hype culture moves so fast that it wouldn't make sense to necessarily do video based marketing. So when they can go viral on Twitter, it kind of becomes a lot easier. And I feel like that's where a lot of these meme coin trading, hype culture people who are so influenced by the pushes that the influencers make hang out is on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah. And let's also not ignore the fact that if you have a presence in the space, regardless of whether your intentions are nefarious or positive, uh, you're going to get you get emails saying, "Hey, we got this new airdrop, we got this new thing. Can you promote this? And we'll give you 10,000 of these tokens." I mean, you've seen that, right? I mean, this is a big problem in the space, and then that gets passed down to the content. I mean, how obviously we can tell people to look at a chart, but a lot of the people who follow crypto haven't really loaded up TradingView in their life, right? So how do we, what's the warning signs when you know someone is probably paid to promote something, which of course is something you don't want to listen to? So I mean, how do we avoid this? I mean, how do we advise people to avoid it, right? Is there a telltale sign?
Well, I mean, let's be honest, Paul. How often have you seen any coin that is promoted or they're using influencers end up being a good investment?
Well, not when I've got to it, for sure.
Right. So it almost seems like if you ever are seeing any kind of influencer promotion hype between a coin, I mean, it could be possible that if you're hearing, some kind of expert speculating on Bitcoin or the market as a whole, sure, that can be trusted. But if you're hearing some kind of influencer who maybe is not the most trustworthy, maybe they don't seem the most knowledgeable, or maybe they seem like they don't have the viewer's best interest in mind, talking about a specific coin, 9.9 times out of 10, it would not end up being a good place to put your money.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's certain language things you can listen for. So if someone is saying, "Here are your options for entering this trade," right? You know that they're probably saying something which makes sense because it's not like buy now, buy now, buy now, right? But so if you're hearing people talk about TA and they're talking about if, when, if this happens, then you probably know that they know what they're talking about, right? At least they're not trying to deceive you, right? But when it's just like, "Oh, this is so hot right now. Don't miss out. You've got to get in this right now. Look, I'm trading it right now. Look, I'm putting 20K down right now. Look at the exchange, right?" That's, I suppose, what what you need to avoid,
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
would agree. But however, I mean, the people are getting more sophisticated as time goes on. Who knows? We may reach a point where even the more deceptive side is going to be using that type of language where they're trying to make it seem like this is a TA based investment because the market's become more sophisticated. People have started to realize that buy now, buy now, buy now is a bad idea. But oh well, if we see a little bit of a dip, maybe that would be your chance to buy. They dump it. Oh, that's your chance to buy, guys. Here we go.
Yeah, and I hear this all the time. I'll hear, well, this whale just bought firstly, I pay attention to whale movements, right? And it's important to do so, right? But people need to understand the context. So if someone says, "Oh, Bitcoin whale's about to sell 20 million," I'm like, "What are you worried about? It is a multi-trillion market cap. 20 million ain't gonna do nothing, right?" So you do have to understand when people are trying to sell TA to you or sell inside information to
I
you. Um, so
we find out.
what about this then? Is crypto or could crypto become less of a financial system, which with all the DeFi hype a few years ago was obviously the premise, especially with Ripple and XRP? Do you see crypto becoming less of a financial system and more of an attention economy?
I think we're already there. I feel like
No, no.
I feel like yes, there's a lot of financial utility, especially with like USDT and USDC, where people are using it to make actual transactions. It's a good way to do it. Even with Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's still a great way to make transactions. If you're holding it and you want to make a purchase and you don't want to have to go through your payment provider and you just want to pull from your bags, you can use that. However, I mean, it does feel like maybe it's felt like this from the start, but you know what I mean? Maybe from the start, people have been like, "Oh, it's all hype culture anyway." But it does feel like, especially with the smaller cap coins, it's pretty much driven only by hype and somewhat influenced by the movements of Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, and I think it's these subtleties, like, are trading communities becoming fan bases rather than investor groups, that sort of thing. And so if you look at gaming, and do you see there's a lot of earn to play in the space, for sure. It's been around for a while. What is your perception of that? My perception, of course, is a little bit more grumpy, that it's just most of it is just a Ponzi scheme in disguise. But I do know my assistant a few years ago, she used to do this all the time and she earned a bit of money. But what's your take on that, on games and that kind of culture?
I feel like with the I feel like it's actually a really interesting space because now there's so much AI development going on that people are actually building really cool things in the gaming space. And a lot of the people who are in the AI development space hang out on Twitter. And that also means that they are also kind of probably involved in the crypto meme coin space. So I feel like there is actually a lot of cool things happening in that industry because of AI development and AI coding and vibe coding. And I don't think it's all horrific. I think it's actually going to probably end up being a really big thing. And I wouldn't say that it becomes automatically untrustworthy because crypto is involved. I would almost say that that's almost that's just the payment processing way that the developers decided to go with, and they're probably more focused on just building a cool game based on what I know about the vibe coding culture.
Yeah, but I think the key thing is, whatever you're doing, research it. Just for a minute, right? Trust pilot it, right? Just have a quick look. Check on Reddit, right? And that's what people just don't do. And I think when you look at crypto from the point of view of all the scams, right? It's almost like an ethereal product which people don't fully understand. But the excitement and fervor behind it gets people to hand over all their money. And that to that point, and certainly with there's a lot of going on around the world in terms of app stores, especially with Apple and third-party alternatives and all this kind of stuff. So, do you think regulators should be stepping in to the main space? And obviously, the Genius Act, which has just passed the Senate in the US, has some provisions with regard to obviously what we're seeing with political figures hawking their own kind of tokens and so forth. Now, I don't think that the legislation goes far enough, but do you think the space needs regulation to make it more palatable for everyday people?
Maybe in a few years, as people,
Well, once we've taken all their money.
yeah, I feel like as people continue to realize that it is risky and hype is really not what is going to make you money, people are going to people are going to really benefit from legislation. I feel like right now people would actually benefit from legislation, but I don't see it happening because it's not really mainstream enough yet. I feel like it almost feels like everybody outside of the space seems to know better than everybody in the space because the people in the space are in a position to be influenced by the culture and get overwhelmed by their emotions. The people outside just see it all as, oh yeah, there they go again, the crypto. Oh yeah, he made a coin, shocker. So, yes, I feel like legislation would be beneficial, but I feel like it's not likely to happen for quite a while.
Yeah, I think it's from a case of you just want to know that if you go on Coinbase or you go on wherever, before you've got hooked in with all the magical world of prop trading, right? And you're just trying to figure out what crypto is, right? It would be nice if you could just go onto a platform and know that all of the coins and tokens in there don't have any trap doors underneath them. But right now they do. They still do. And that's part of the problem. So how, obviously from a trading perspective, you can say, okay, recognize, because I mean, how do we reconcile the seriousness of financial investment and trading with this meme coin driven chaos? So I could sit here and say, well, use less capital when you know it's a highly volatile asset. Sure. We can say, be very mindful of that these can come down as quick as you can go up, and therefore you need to have a different strategy when you're changing. I mean, meme coins, you could probably trade a little bit more like low caps, regardless of what their market cap is, right? But I mean, it's still I still stay away from it. I do trade Pepe every now and again. I'm invested a little bit in Dog with Hat because I'm aware, of course, that, the space is going in this direction, at least for now. But I still struggle to reconcile that. And so you as a trader, how do you reconcile like your approach and the seriousness of what you're doing with the fact that you load up Dogecoin on TradingView and it comes up with a picture of a dog, right?
Yeah, it's only one in every 20 times or something though. So,
Yeah.
don't get that. Don't think it's that immature. But I would agree. And I would say that there are a lot of these that can be traded based on TA, like especially the ones that are listed on Coinbase. Most of those have had enough price history that you can actually trade them based on at least a volume profile and get an idea of what they may do throughout the different cycles. So I would say that there are a lot of good opportunities with them. And I would say that some of them can definitely be traded profitably, even if you're at a skill level where you feel like you're too good for the hype culture. It wouldn't make sense to totally ignore them because, yes, you're going to have a ton of opportunities from Bitcoin and Ethereum, but if you kind of zoom out a little bit and you're willing to use the same strategies on some of these altcoins, they could potentially move in a very similar way, but you might be able to get better trades on them with being able to risk less. You might just get better setups when you have hundreds and hundreds of options. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't say you should avoid them. But what I would say is, regardless of the TA, terrible things can happen with these coins. One of them that I remember back in the day, about maybe like a few months ago, was Reef. And Reef was, I don't remember what the functionality of it was, but I remember they had a very cool website. And I remember that Reef it was like a plus 100% a day. Like, everybody was talking about Reef for about a month. It was the most incredible thing. The website was so cool. They were going to do this thing in tech that they all say they're going to do that nobody really understands, but it's pumping. So let's, it must be okay. And I remember in a community that I'm in, everybody was longing Reef at practically the same time. I don't know, it must have gone up 500% in the day. And I remember every single one of them was liquidated on the trade because at that same time, that was the top of all time. Like if you look back at the chart, you'll see a 100% wick at that point, and then
Really?
just like dump for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And all of those traders were, oh, it's gonna come back. I'm already almost liquidated. I can't sell now. And it's just continued now to, I haven't looked at the chart in so long because nobody talks about it anymore, but I'm sure it's lower now than it was when it even started gaining 100% in a day. And that's the thing, like even when it seems like even when they seem tradable, the company behind them can still ruin everything. And that's where the caution needs to come.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember Reef. I'd probably traded it a couple of times. So I think I've got this question here. I think we've already kind of answered it. Can something silly still be valuable if it builds a strong community? And I think Dogecoin has proven that as an example. It's proven that. But I think with everything, just know what you're trading, right? Be aware that meme coins are typically going to have a trap door because there are people, of course, trying to make money off them. But that's the same in the rest of the space. But obviously, there's a lot of hype which we need to avoid. So, obviously, we've had the Bitcoin break all-time highs, and I mean, my advice to people is like, don't just close your ears. Don't get caught up with the hype because you're just going to make mistakes. You're just going to make mistakes. But I mean, silliness. How can you? So last question, I suppose. So how could you give some guidance, perhaps, to any budding crypto traders here? Maybe people have just signed up to Honor Prime X and are trying to have a go at the challenges, right? And make how do they move on from this silliness and make money from it, right? So not following the hype, but observing the hype and then coming up with a strategy to benefit from it. So I suppose the simple thing would be when you see people running that way, you run the other way, right? So, I mean, have you got any tips you could give people?
Paul, you can tell me if you agree with this. I would say if a coin has been through at least 2 cycles, you're safe to trade it. And your trading should only be based on the TA and not based on anything you see. on any social media, Twitter whatsoever. And I feel like that is the best way to safely trade these meme coins and get other opportunities outside of, the top 2 to the top 50, is just to focus on the TA and trade them like anything else. Because if they've been around for 2 cycles, chances are they're safe enough for you to maybe not put your money in as a 10-year investment, but they're safe enough for you to trade. They're not going to do like Reef did.
Touch wood. Touch wood. Yeah, absolutely. Look, this has been I think we definitely need to talk more about this and do another one. I think this is going to be a very important conversation going forward about how to negotiate the space as it develops, and it seems to be moving in this area. So thank you so much for your insights, and it's great to finally meet you. I've been really impressed with the work you've been doing so far, and I think anyone who loves short form content will probably agree. So if you're not already subscribed to Hola Prime X and you're sick of me, do it for Grant, because he's creating some great content.
Do it for me.
But really good stuff. But that's it for today's episode. A big shout out to you, Grant. Thank you for joining the team and jumping right in with some very sharp takes. If this episode got your gears turning for MAME, or you have been side-eyeing your last meme coin buy, make sure you subscribe, drop a like, and of course, if you have a friend who thinks Dogecoin is still a joke, maybe forward this video to them. But stay focused, stay skeptical, and of course, trade smart. But until next time, thank you so much, everybody. Take care for now.
Hola Prime, trade with transparency.